It's 7:30 on February 3rd. We're in the Crow Wing County Historic Courthouse, third floor County Boardroom at 326 Laurel Street. I will call to order the Brainerd City Council meeting, and we'll start with roll call.
Pritchett.
Here.
Bevins.
Here.
Bedot.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Lambert. Here. Stunek. Johnson.
Here.
Mink.
Present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Lambert, a second by Pritchett to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by our voices. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is the consent calendar. Notice to public, all matters listed are considered routine by the council and will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Pritchett, a second by Lambert to approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
Bedot.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert. Yes. Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 6, Council Committee Reports. We will start this meeting with the Personnel and Finance Committee. Alderman Bedot.
All right, we have 6 items on our agenda tonight, the first of which is the approval of bills and payments to contractors contingent on SP&W, the Safety and Public Works, authorizing change order number 1 on the improvement 1708 for Garfield Safe Routes to School, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the bills as presented, with one bill contingent on SP&W's approval. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
Bedot.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert. Yes. Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries.
All right, item number 2 is the police officer resignation. The motion coming out of committee is to accept Officer Gowan's resignation with regret, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept with regret. Is there any discussion?
So for those of you paying attention, this is the 4th vacancy that we have. We're anticipating another vacancy with a retirement coming up, but the Civil Service Commission is on it. So
Excellent. So fourth vacancy, we have 4 vacancies, which means right now we have 23 officers on the payroll, 22 currently on the payroll, and we may be down to 21 shortly. Well, the Civil Service Commission has a lot of work ahead of them.
yes.
He can deputize people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed could find
Pick all
quirky
you
5
guys.
people right here.
Not me. No.
I look good in uniform.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, item number 3 is the City Hall fire alarm system update. My first screw up of the night. This is where things get interesting, folks. The motion coming out of committee is to authorize option 2, install the new control panel and replace the annunciator at the cost of $5,195, and I so move.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Okay, so we had a lot of discussion on this, and actually, thankfully, we had the fire chief down there with us this evening. The annunciator is actually what the fire department comes to and sees at the front of the building, the panel that tells them where the fire is. It is required in buildings. For some reason, ours, it would not be excused of that. So in option number 2, we are replacing the annunciator as well as the control panel. What ended up happening here, for some backstory, is in the remodel, what we found is that our fire alarm is hooked up to the telephone line, and that is no longer in compliance. It must be hooked up through the internet. And so that's what started this. But in talking with the police chief, the base that we should be going with is for sure replacing that annunciator. There was discussion at our meeting as well that it may be in our interest to go ahead and replace the entire fire system. We're looking at probably around $12,500 in order to do that, but we would want to put that out for bidding if we were to do so.
Question,
Yep.
the ceilings are all kind of torn apart right now.
Yep.
Wouldn't this be a decision you'd make sooner than later?
Well, we leave that option to you. In looking
Send
at
it to personnel and finance.
Well, personal finance made a decision, and we went with option number 2, which would be to replace. The thought process behind this is we're at about year 14 on this system, 15 to 20 year expectancy on it. However, by removing the phone line and using the internet, we will be saving about $643 a year. So in our estimate, let's fix the problem, and then we can address later if we need to.
Okay, any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question. Is this something that would be movable if we get a new building, or is it transferable, whatever you call it?
I hope we're not building a new city hall. I thought we decided not to do that.
I mean, if-
sorry.
No, I'm not saying that, but if that is decided, would we just go with the whole brand-new whole system?
For a new building? I would assume so, yes. I would
Okay.
assume we would just go with a new system.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote on approving option number 2. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, our next item, let me get to it here quick, is the retirement of building official Chuck Arvidsson, and we actually have 3 motions on this subject, so we're going to go ahead and just break them down. The first motion is to accept the retirement with regret, effective March 3rd, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept with regret. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Okay, so we'll give you a little backstory on the second part of this. Due to the retirement, this puts us in a position where we do not have and let's read this here. It is Chuck actually holds the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry Delegation Agreement for inspection, which actually allows us to inspect the public buildings, which we need for the school district and for other buildings that we would be doing in the near future. That agreement, we figure, right now we have about $150,000 in planned permit revenue coming in the next year. And by losing Chuck, we are at risk of losing those permit revenue. So the second motion is to authorize staff to enter into a PRO agreement with Chuck Arvidsson and negotiate the terms not to exceed what is listed in his letter with the approval of the attorneys. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to enter into a phased retirement option with Chuck Arvidsson. Any discussion?
So there was a little bit of question by our attorney on item 5 on the letter, which is listing of, excuse me here, if I can get to it. Travel time. And so rather than gum up the whole works, we're going to allow staff to work with him in negotiations with coming to an agreement that is acceptable with both us and our attorney.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we will vote on entering into the phased retirement option with Chuck Arvidsson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, and the third motion is to designate Darren Deseth as the interim building official effective March 3rd, 2020, and to direct staff to begin discussions with the union for the position. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint Darren Deseth as the interim building official. Any discussion?
So the secondary part to this is we probably should be looking at what we want to do with this position moving forward, whether or not we want to go out and find a new person for the position, or whether or not we want to find someone to hold the agreement for us until Darren is ready. I think we're looking at about 2 years before he is eligible for that. That's a discussion we think needs to be held probably in the future, and so we've asked staff to come back at the next meeting with that information. But we'd like to move forward with the process right now in naming him as the interim building official.
Mr.
Connie.
Chair, I'd just like to add that the building official is required, a city is required to have a building official in order to issue building permits. So it is a position that we have to have within the city.
Yeah, it's in the charter, like our attorney and engineer, and so we got to have one. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, the next item is just a quickie, if you did your homework. This is the annual review of the investment policy, and the motion coming out of committee is to approve the policy as presented. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the investment policy as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, and the last item is the request for additional street department employee and funding opportunity, and this one's a doozy, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read it. The motion is to authorize staff to change the state aid maintenance allocation to up to 25% beginning in 2021, and to transfer the state aid funds from Fund 401 to Street Fund 235 on an annual basis to cover the base wage and benefits of the Maintenance 3 position in perpetuity, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So we had spoke downstairs that there's a very lengthy and really in-depth memo that was by Paul Sandy. Because Paul was not able to come to our meeting, I'd like to let him speak on behalf of the memo.
I'll allow it.
Thanks, Mr. President. So, as you can see in the memo, we get into quite a bit of detail about funding in future years regarding our state aid system, our maintenance allocation as it stands currently, and our maintenance allocation of what I think we should be doing in the future, and obviously the request to all of you to fund an additional street department employee. So going through the memo, I'm going to try to keep this quick at the request of Alderman Beddoe. In Table 1, and I don't know if Connie, you can pull this up as we go, right now, in the next 4 years, we have approximately $1.5 million estimated in state aid projects. That's equivalent to approximately, $375,000 a year. In Table 2, we show that our allocation in 2020 is $911,863. Right now, our state aid allocation, we have chosen to delegate $1,500 per mile out of our state aid account to go into our construction fund, which equates to $27,555. A maintenance allocation at 25% using our allocation in 2020 equates to about $227,000. So those last two items there are what our total construction allocation would be if we were to switch from the 1,500 to the 25%. Getting into Table 3, we get into the construction fund. Right now, we have a levy going into the construction fund of $368,000 and change. Our state aid allocation coming in at $27,555. We have a total revenue of about $400,000. Salaries and all of our maintenance projects and expenditures equate to approximately $423,000. So most of the time, this account runs in the red at $27,253. Moving on, this is where the funding proposal comes to cover this staff. We estimated through the memo, you can kind of read through it, that we can show that with the current time we spend doing equipment maintenance, an estimation for small repair work or just preventative maintenance such as greasing, and the amount of overtime hours that are in the department in 2019, we can cover about 0.85 FTE. My funding proposal for this position was to increase our state aid allocation to the 25%, and that you can see increases our revenues to $600,000 in the account. We would transfer $82,000 out of this account into our Street and Sewer Fund 235, which is a 3-year average of the Maintenance 3 mechanics position with benefits. We would increase our large patching project to $50,000. This was a recommendation by my staff. We used to spend about $10,000 a year on this project, which really doesn't get us very far. You can see with the total expenditures of $545,000 and change, we actually are in a surplus in the construction fund with this proposal. Obviously, there's some assumptions that were made that you can see in the memo here. Really, it all comes down to the need to perform repairs on our equipment. When we have snow events and things, we do have a piece of equipment that sits right away in the morning when we're plowing parking lots with our loader. We feel that having this mechanics position filled in our department would be of a great benefit to not only our street department, but there may be extra time for them to work on other items around the city. We're not quite sure what that'll look like until we actually fill that position, if it's authorized tonight. But I guess I'm here to offer any answers to any questions that the council may have.
I've got a couple of questions, Paul. What is the downside of going from $1,500 a mile to 25% of our allocation?
If I may, Mr. President, yes. So we would be paying, so obviously the last few years we've been pretty aggressive on our state aid program. Going to the 25% will reduce our future construction allocation, which was going to pay back those other projects. So saying that, our allocation from 2019 to 2020 also increased by $100,000. So there is wiggle room there, and depending on what the legislature does in the next few years with a transportation package, we could end up at a point where we do have more money coming into our state aid construction fund, which would make that almost a wash. So it's just that it's less money going to pay off our previous construction projects.
Right, so and then in future years, we're going to only have 75% of the money coming in for construction projects. But as I understand it, we can advance 2021's money, 2022's money, 2023's money. The state will just continue to give us money interest-free. So I'm not seeing a downside of going to 25%. I think it's just a no-brainer. So what am I missing?
There is a limit to the advancement amount. It's 4 times our last allocation or $4 million, whatever is greater. So we're at the $4 million mark. We're at, 300 or 3.6 million if we use 4 times. So right now we're at like probably a little over 2 in our advanced. So we're in the negative by about 2 million. So
we can advance $1.5 million, you're telling me?
yeah, which we're doing some more of that this year again, as you know. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions, Engineer? Kelly?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak in favor of the motion. I think this is a good motion. I almost think it's 2 motions, but Mr. Minow chose to make it as one, and I support them both.
We were at our limit of motions.
Yeah, right. I understand that. No, I'm used to SP&W where we have unlimited motions. But I really think we could need, the argument can be made that we need a maintenance guy, period. The funding source just happens to be the timing. And, but I almost think we could do the change of status with MnDOT and the maintenance and not hire the maintenance guy. So it could go, they could conceivably be separate. I happen to support them both, so I'm not complaining. But the other issue you and I talked about, 60 days, 30 days after the budgeting process, if we're gonna put a guy on, it should have been part of the budgeting process. Now, this particular start is sometime in the fall, next to 2021, so it practically is a budgeting item for 2021 anyway. But if we could put these, if nothing else, it's more transparent to put them on during the budgeting process. So, but I support the motion as it's presented.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Dave?
Yeah, I would agree that that's the way that I feel about most of this stuff as well, is that we budget for a reason. And I don't like when we start shifting things around immediately at the new year. However, given the large extent of the memo that was given and just the quantity of and quality of the information given, I think it's a great move.
Any other discussion, Connie?
Did the motion include the hire date of November 15th?
Not
2020?
as I spoke it, but I believe downstairs we had put a date on there, so.
Will you restate the motion?
Would you like me to add that addition in there? I don't know where the heck I'm gonna sneak it in.
Making another motion.
Do
because that
you want me
would
to
bump
split
up
it first?
against
How many times am I dividing this? Anybody got a knife? All right, so authorize staff to change the state aid maintenance allocation to up to 25% beginning in 2021, and to transfer the state aid funds from Fund 401 to Street Fund 235 on an annual basis to cover the base wage and benefits of the maintenance 3 position in perpetuity.
I would do another motion of hiring.
That's what I'm thinking, reading that. So
You're going to go over
continue.
your limit? Okay, so we,
We're going to go negative tonight.
You can advance your motion allocation.
Yeah, we'll go negative.
so that's the motion you already stated. Is there any other discussion? I have one question. Why do we have in perpetuity? Like, we can't really decide how many maintenance people they have in 2032.
I think the thought process behind that, if I may, is that we're going to do it on an annual basis for as long as we have the state aid funds to cover the position, is I think what the thought process was. So every year, we don't have to come back to council and authorize a transfer, even though we probably will put it on the agenda anyway as a transfer. So I guess at the in perpetuity,
Yep.
we can take that off if you would.
No, that's perfectly fine. I was just wondering because we could change it next week if we wanted.
I like people knowing that when we make a decision, it goes on forever.
You have a mechanic forever, even if we have,
Right.
even if we
nobody's
have self-driving electric plow trucks that don't require.
Hydros.
We just make snow illegal.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. You have another motion?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Connie, I'm not seeing the date. Was it 11:15?
Approximately
Only
11:15.
11:15. So it would be to, I will make a motion to fill the maintenance 3 mechanic position on the date of on or around the date of 11/15/2020. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you.
End of report.
Thank you, Alderman Bedeau. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the Safety and Public Works agenda, and we'll give that to Alderman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 6 agenda items. Item number 1 is improvement 1708, change order number 1. And this is the one that was the contingency in the PNF bills. The motion is to approve the attached application, of course contingent on PNF committee authorizing the payment application to the contractor on the agenda, the amount being $23,383.80. This is the Garfield Safe Routes to School change orders, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is improvement 19-05, the 2019 striping project final pay estimate. Number 1, the motion is to accept staff's authorization of the payment to Crow Wing County in the total amount of $15,673.09. And that payment's also on PNF for payment of bills. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3 is the ISD 181 Harrison Elementary Sewer Easement. The motion is to execute the attached easement and authorization to obtain proper signatures on the easement document, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is just moving the sanitary sewer from underneath Harrison School, the new part of the Harrison School, to another part of the property, and then gives us the opportunity to have that easement to maintain that sewer.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 4 is a reclassification request by Crow Wing County on some tax forfeit non-conservation parcels. The motion is to accept staff's recommendation concurrent with the Crow Wing County's non-conservation status of the parcel that is presented so that the land may be placed on the Crow Wing County land sale, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, this just allows us to, twice a year, they go through and determine whether it's something that's beneficial to the city of Brainerd to keep off the tax rolls and in our possession, or to now allow Crow Wing County to go sell it and put it back on the tax rolls. So
And then another question, this is kind of related to item 6 on your agenda, but this land surrounds County State Aid Highway 20. And we wouldn't see any need for the city to use that in the future for any non-motorized transportation options or anything.
We can't see it one. I mean, most of it's wetland
No.
or lowland along the river. So I don't see that to be the case.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 5 is the Cuyuna Lake State Trail alignment. The motion is to accept staff's recommendation, approval of the concept of the alignment that's presented, so that the design, development, easement drawings, and other documents may be drafted so the project can meet its deadline of July of 2021, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, obviously, very disappointed that we were unable to consummate any kind of agreement with the railroad to get across the railroad tracks on 13th. That was the whole plan. It didn't work. We have to come up with something else. We have monies available that we've applied for that have a deadline. So we have to come up with something. We already have the trail on 28th. We already have a plan for a trail in the purple section along 25, of which we did not get bonding funded for last year. Little Falls did, but hopefully we will this year. There are some other considerations, such as going through the MP Center, which is private property, crossing Washington Street, where the light now is at 4th, and it probably should be at 5th, which would move it 1 block further to the east. All that being said, you have to have a plan before you can start fine-tuning it, and this lays out a plan that works. So, I mean, there was other discussions regarding Oak Street, regarding crossing Washington at a different position, but this seems to be, at least as far as moving forward, a proposal that is workable and usable and takes advantage of what we're already trying to do. So,
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last agenda item is the County State Aid Highway 20, which is the Riverside Drive from Highway 210 Washington up to Beaver Dam Road. The motion is to accept staff's recommendation, approve the turnback of County State Aid Highway 20, which is Riverside Drive, from Washington Street to Beaver Dam Road in concurrence with the offer from Crow Wing County, under the conditions that the portion of the roadway from Jackson Street to Beaver Dam be reconfigured and restriped as part of the 2020 construction Riverside Drive at the Crow Wing County's expense and approved by the city engineer, and we're requesting Crow Wing County to pay for half of the engineering fees that the city's incurring, roughly $70,000, so an additional $35,000 to what they've listed. And I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, the thought process is that at the very least, that would give us some more money to help beautify the roundabout if needed, or it can be used to pay for the engineering fees. This is likely going to cost us money over the next 20 to 50 years. But it's in the city's best interest to have this over that time period. It's likely our thoughts and process on the use of this will be different than the county's. County's moving cars. We have all kinds of other considerations, such as multimodal transportation. This is our only opportunity to negotiate. So.
All right, and yeah, and I support it, absolutely, and I think if we can get an off-street trail there is a good idea. And on the cost, of course, roads are expensive, and we may lose money over the next 50 years, but we're all county taxpayers too, and it's kind of a waste of money for them to go off their route to plow a dead-end 20 from Beaver Dam down to Washington Street and back. So it's saving county taxpayers a few bucks too, so I think it's a good deal that works out for everybody. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That
End
motion-
of report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bevins. That brings us to number 7, unfinished business. A, call for applicants. Mayor Menk.
Yes, we have several committees that need applicants to volunteer for. By the way, the applications are available at the City Hall or on the city's website. All these applications or terms will be expiring 12/31 of the year I state. Cable TV Advisory Committee, 2 terms expiring 2021, 2 terms expiring 2022. The Charter Commission, 2 terms expiring 2020 and 1 term expiring 2021, 1 term expiring 2022, and 1 term expiring 2023. A little explanation about Charter Commission. This is the document that actually controls how the city operates. Very important, does not meet a lot, but is extremely important. It has to meet at least once a year, and we need applicants to be able to fulfill that duty. Next item is on the EDA. This is a little different. September 7th of the year I state, we have 1 application, 1 position available expiring in 2020. Now I'm going to turn it over to the council president.
Thank you, Mayor Mink. And on that EDA, it's expiring September of 2020, so if somebody wants to take a small bite of an 8-month experience, it'd be an easy way to try it out. But I have one position I'm looking to recommend, and that is our Planning Commission. I have 1 term that's expiring at the end of year 2022. Please fill out your applications at City Hall. Also, we are currently still looking for more people to join our Water Tower Committee. Please feel free to apply. Next up on the agenda is the City Hall remodel update. And I think we have City Engineer Sandy and Kevin Curry here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As I kind of say in the agenda request, we've been under construction for a couple months now. Things are going well. Kevin from Contagrity Group, who's our on-site representative, he's here tonight to kind of give you the down low on what's going on in City Hall and when we can, staff can expect to kind of be back in their spaces and doing the functions that you hire us to do. So, Kevin.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I'm going to report actually on the City Hall and the Police Department. We haven't started the Police Department project, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what the schedule is there. First of all, in the City Hall, speak to the schedule. And we phased that project into 4 phases, basically by floor, level 1, 2, 3, and exterior. So initially, the move-in date for phase 1 was the end of January. Before the project started, in consultation with Paul and the rest of the staff, we decided to consolidate phase 1 and 2. That allows us to open up more work in the building to be done, and the result was that it pushed out the first phase completion, but it got phase 2 done quicker. So we're basically doing more work first before we relocate people. They also thought it would be less disruptive to have both 1 and 2 reoccupy instead of having that construction spread out over that time period. So the current scheduled move-in date for phase 1 is February 27th. That would be the IT department and transit in that level. And the initial move-in date for phase 2, which would be engineering department, was April 16th. We now project that that will be the end of March. March 30th, so we'll get them in there quicker. Any questions on the schedule?
Just so it sounds like everything's going as you'd planned, just for the whole construction process at City Hall.
Yes.
You're not finding a lot of things in the walls of City Hall that have been sitting there for 100 years and you didn't know what they were? Or
No,
anything?
there were a few unforeseens, but all minor in nature.
Jim Thoreen.
Any other questions, anybody?
I'll now speak to the budget for City Hall. As you can recall, the total budget, including the contractor quotes, the general conditions or the overhead of the project, and the owner items that were some IT issues, things like that, that were directly bought by the owner of the city. That total, all in, was $1,860,585, just to recall. The total change orders to date, we've had 3 proposal requests come in for changes. The total for that is a negative $1,106.
That's a good number.
So our change orders are currently in the negative.
Yeah.
Contingency currently, I'm not taking that 1,100 into account because we have some pending, but the current contingency balance remains at $230,784. Pending changes, we have some changes coming in for handrails. We're not replacing some handrails that were shown to be replaced because they're good to go the way they are. We're going to add a handrail that wasn't called for to be removed. That's probably going to net out to about a push, or no-cost change. There's been some miscellaneous piping changes, that was some unforeseen, and some drywall work associated with that plumbing. All those combined, probably a small net add, but well within our contingency. I mean, I would guess by the time those are all sorted out, we're still going to have a negative change order balance. So from a budgetary standpoint, we're doing very well. Any questions on the budget? Okay. The police department, the schedule, the initial start date was the 13th of January. We're currently scheduled to start February 17th. A couple of major factors of the delay there. The first one had to do with determining how we were going to secure an access while we were working on the entry vestibule of the police department. And we looked at several options with the staff and with the architect, different doors, different ways to do it. We finally settled on what we believe is the most economical and reasonable solution. We're going to create a temporary entry vestibule in the parking garage that's attached to the building. But we had to sort that out before we started the project. Obviously, it was very important to have that secure entry. So it wasn't part of the discussion during the design, but we now have it figured out. The other part of that is, in speaking with Corky, we didn't want to start the work, get them all torn up and disrupted, and then have us pause. So we wanted everybody to be able to come in right after each other and keep going. And there's a handful of contractors that still are in the process of securing their background checks on employees which are required to work in the building. So once everybody gets squared away on that, and we know that that's coming, then we will start the demolition so that we're not stretching out the period of construction. So there wasn't any concerns about getting started right away. It really didn't matter. What was important is that we didn't go in, tear things up, and then not be able to put them back together. So that's the reason for the delay on that.
So the delay and the secondary secure entrance, is that going to add to the budget a little bit then?
Yes, the secure entry, we haven't completely finished the design and pricing, and we're getting the contractors to give us ideas on how to minimize that. But we're thinking maybe it might be, I don't know, $15,000, $18,000 to basically have to build a temporary room. The expense comes in controlling the environment in the room because it's in a parking garage. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to get fresh air into that space. So we're talking about a temporary air handling system for that, which sounds expensive, but we looked at a lot of other options, and this is what we came up with. So again, it's well within the budget. Speaking to that, the budget was initially $303,325 with a contingency of $23,742. So taking these two projects together, I would suggest that we're going to probably have at least $200,000 remaining in the contingency on City Hall when the project's done. So
Good.
I don't see that being a problem when you look at the two in combination.
So hopefully we don't find problems in the street garage then, which is the newest of the buildings you'll be working on, so that'll have the most problems, right? Is there any questions? No. All right, thanks for the update. Okay, that brings us to item number 8 on our agenda, new business, and we have a hearing for a potentially dangerous dog.
And thank you, Mr. President. I'll start out. Our animal control officer received a call regarding a dog bite, and after his investigation, did deem this dog as potentially dangerous. On January 13th, the city did receive a request from the owner of the dog, Mr. Stephen Norden, sorry, for a hearing for his potentially dangerous dog. This was supposed to be on the agenda at our next meeting. However, both parties did agree to have that hearing be held tonight. The animal control officer is here, as is our attorney, as is the dog owner. And with that, Mr. President, I would suggest that you turn it over to our attorney, who can discuss how this hearing will proceed.
Absolutely. Joe, how do we proceed?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So, just briefly, as you indicated, this is an appeal of a designation that's already occurred. So the dog has already been designated as potentially dangerous, not dangerous, potentially dangerous. As an appeal, the council sits as the judge. As the attorney, I represent staff here as the attorney for animal control. And what we're going to do is, since it's an appeal of the designation, Mr. Nordine will have the first opportunity to come up and make a statement, provide some testimony as to what happened. I will reserve the right to ask some questions if it seems necessary. The court, as it will, you have the right to ask questions of the witness as well, both Mr. Nordine and the animal control officer and the victim. I just want to mention, too, before we get started here, that your city code incorporates state law, and the state law defines potentially dangerous dog as an animal that, when unprovoked, inflicts a bite on a human or domestic animal on public or private property. That's it. That's the whole threshold right there. Inflicts a bite on a human on public or private property. The other point I would make is that this really, as indicated in your packet, there's no action that needs to be taken by the dog owner should this designation stand. The only requirement under state law is that the dog be chipped. Dog's already chipped. So nothing additional needs to be done by the dog owner at this point. The significance of the designation is that it puts the dog one step closer to being a dangerous dog. So if there's another bite, then we go down that path, and all that entails is being a dangerous dog. But for this evening, we're just focusing on the potentially dangerous dog definition. So with that, I would turn it over to Mr. Nordine for his comments.
Council,
Name and address, please.
thank you for seeing me. My dog is Dixon. He's a yellow lab.
Name and address for the record, please.
915 Laurel Street. Any other information you need, specifics?
No, just hear your.
On a certain date, on October of last year, I got arrested for driving after suspension. On the date that this happened was a couple months later, when I had county administration screwed up a court date. I ended up with a warrant I didn't know I had, and the police came and arrested me at my shop. And the police department left my dogs in the car for like 20 hours unsecured. The only thing I could do was I contacted a friend that was here that was helping. I yelled at him and said, hey, take care of my dogs. They wouldn't let me secure my animals, which there was no reason for that whatsoever. I've been in the same building for 8 years, part of the city. I mean, you all probably see me running my dogs every day. My dogs are friendly. The only time I've ever seen my dog protect anything is when he's in the car. He loves his car rides, you know. But anyway, Mr. Williams, I do believe his name is, had my dog out of the car for a period of time and put him back in the car. Then he tried to retrieve the dog back out of the car again. And when the dog growled at him, he should have let the dog stay in the car. You back away from a growling dog. I consider all dogs potentially dangerous. They're dogs, they're animals. Not just mine, as you said. My dog's around kids every day, children. We run the trails. He runs up on other dogs, never bites them, never has a problem. Cody, to this day, Cody Williams, does not have a problem with that dog. Walks right up to him. My dog's in the car, I could walk out, put him on a leash, walk in here, put him right there, tell him to sit down, and he'd stay right there, and maybe wander over and smell you. That's it, just like any other dog. But it shouldn't be deemed dangerous because he was trying to be drug out of a car in the situation where my dog was stressed because the police department put him in that situation. Now, I know that it doesn't matter. Like he said, it doesn't matter. Tonight just deems him a dangerous dog. It does matter because he's not. That's just the way it is. He's not. Mr. Williams, after receiving the bite that he did get in the hand, waited 2 days, maybe longer, to get his infection because he didn't wash his hand. He was working on a snowmobile and got it full of grease and got an infection in his hand. So he went to the doctor to get antibiotics. Told him he got bit by a dog a few days earlier. Now, the next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call from a guy telling me he's animal control. I don't know who he is. I don't have a clue. He says I lied to him. Well, yeah, I don't know who the hell you are. Sorry. I want to know who you are before I disclose information on phone or, whatever. Well, in the process, I find out he is animal control, so I called him back. He wants to take my dog, strip him from me. This is my baby. This is my son, basically my child, my children. And he wants to take him from me and stick him in a kennel someplace and watch him for 10 days. Now, by this time, there's already 7 days passed. Right? 7 days. So 7 days later, now he wants to kennel my dog, strip him from me, distress him even more. Put him in a situation where, my dog's already screaming because I'm not there, because we're not together like we are every day for the last 8 years. And he wants to put him in that situation. I don't want him to. I'm sorry. Would you do that to your animal? It ain't right. At least come to me. Let me go. I told him, you want to quarantine my dog? Take me with him. I'll sit in the same cell. But no, that ain't good enough either. I'll call the police, he says. I don't think that's the way the business should be run or handled. I'd like you to meet Dixon if I could. I can walk out, put him on a leash. He's friendly. He's a beautiful dog. Everybody knows Dixon and Simon. They don't remember my name much, but they remember my dog. Okay? That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Mr. Nordine, just one quick question. You talked about,
Do I need an attorney here?
one quick question. You talked about what happened at the time that the bite occurred.
I wasn't present.
That was my question. You
Yeah.
weren't present.
No, I was in
Right.
jail, I said. Police department arrested me without letting me secure my animals. Any other questions?
Nope, we heard all that.
Thank you.
So we're good.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
So now we'd bring up,
Yep. Mr. President, at this point, I would ask the animal control officer to come up and walk through his knowledge of what happened here. He's got a couple of documents. One of them was already in the packet, and I think we'll add as well his report. So I'll be passing that around, so. My name is Michael O'Brien. I'm the Animal Control Officer for Brainerd. Before I get into it, correct a couple of things he said. Mr. Williams didn't wait 2 days to go to the hospital. He got bit right around 7 a.m. and it wasn't like, ripped his hand off or anything. There were some puncture wounds. I sent Ms. Hillman a couple of pictures that we had. He went in around, I got the call at 11:45 p.m., right around there, and that he was at the emergency room, so I went down then and seen him. It wasn't 2 days, it was 15 hours or whatever that would be. The procedure for an animal bite like this is anytime an animal bites a person, we verify that it has current rabies vaccination. And for about 4.5, 5 days, I had put notes in this door at the 915 Laurel Street address, which was the only address I had. I had a phone number that he had given to the police, and that went to some other individual, a guy, a different name on a voicemail, and no voicemails were returned. And after about, on the 5th day, I went to the police department, and we had a sergeant go out and finally track him down for me because we needed to find the dog and make sure it was vaccinated for rabies. And he said it was, but he didn't have the paperwork. And so I gave him till the next day, and we met, and if he could produce the paperwork, we would actually let him keep the dog for the remainder of the 10 days in quarantine versus us bringing it to Hart. And as far as him hanging out at Hart with the dog, that doesn't happen. There's no facilities for people to stay there. So he was able to go to his veterinarian, secure the paperwork. It did have a current rabies vaccination. So we let him keep the dog for the remainder of the 10 days. On the 11th day, I met with him just to make sure that the dog is basically still alive. If at that point it is, it doesn't have rabies. Even if it has rabies vaccination, they have to be quarantined somewhere, and we allow that to happen at the house, and we have to verify that it isn't still in good health, which it was. Just to correct that. But so basically, I got the call. I went down. I met with Mr. Williams at the hospital, saw the bite, talked with him, tried to get a hold of Steve. We did. Like he said, the threshold for a potentially dangerous dog is pretty low. Any unprovoked bite on a human or domestic animal, by state statute, defines it as a potentially dangerous dog. He did say, he did say dangerous dog several times. Huge difference between potentially dangerous dog and dangerous dog. We're only talking about potentially dangerous dog here. And whether or not any dog is a potentially dangerous dog, not every dog is biting people. And Steve himself did tell me on 2 different occasions that before the dog actually bit Cody, it had bit somebody else, not a severe bite, they didn't go to the hospital, but it did bite somebody, and he said it was in the same situation, getting it out of a vehicle. Other than that, I don't. And just, is this your report there?
Yeah.
And this is your notice as well?
Yep.
So Joe is asking if that's his report, and he's saying that, yes, it is indeed
Yes,
his
correct.
report.
And the notice I gave to Steve that we determined the dog to be potentially dangerous.
Okay. I was just getting it in the microphone so the people
Oh,
at
sorry.
home can't hear side
Okay.
conversations.
Thank you.
I was asked you to review this document, your report, second page of this, which is your letter dated January 6th, or report dated January 6th, 2020, which walks through basically what you were just talking about here, and just ask you, is everything in this document accurate to the best of your recollection? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of this stuff was told to me, so it's accurate as I know it to be correct. Okay. Council, any questions for the animal control officer?
Is there a threshold for the definition, unprovoked?
Yeah.
So by statute, the definition of provocation is any act an adult could reasonably expect may cause a dog to attack. That's the definition of provocation.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Kelly?
May I ask a question of Mr. O'Brien?
Yep.
Cody Williams, the victim, yes?
Yes.
How is he related, a male?
I'm sorry, what?
Cody is a man?
Yes, sir.
How is he related to what was happening?
Yeah, so
Does
at
he
the-
work for you?
He does not work for me. So at the time, basically, again, I wasn't present when the dog
Right,
bit
I-
Mr.
I-
Williams.
I
So,
get
so what I was told was Mr. Nodine was being placed into custody.
Yep, I got that.
At some point in time, he asked Cody to watch the dog. Cody was staying on his property.
Cody's somebody who is familiar with the dog
Yeah,
owner?
yep.
Okay, all right,
As far as I know, yes.
okay. So he's a friend, maybe, I don't know, we don't know.
Of me?
No, of the dog owner,
I
Maybe.
I gathered that, yes.
not familiar.
No, I thought they at least knew each other, and he said he
Okay.
was a friend.
Okay. Could have been some guy walking down the street.
Could have been.
We don't know. Not that maybe it matters, but I'm just trying to put everybody straight here.
Well, he asked Mr. Williams to care for his dog, so I'm assuming they knew each other.
He didn't say the name.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe he said the name.
The name.
Cody Williams.
He said Mr. Williams.
Yeah, he said
Did he?
Mr. Williams.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's just trying to get it all square. Thank you.
So I just.
Mr. Williams is present tonight.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
So my question is, so are the dogs knew Mr. Williams? Their dogs were familiar with Mr. Williams?
As I understand it, they do, yes, or they did.
Okay.
So what we need to determine here, the council, is if the dog bit somebody, which it seems like pretty much everybody in this room is in agreement the dog bit somebody. So then we have to figure out if he was unprovoked and the statutory limit of provocation is something a reasonable adult would, what was it?
Would expect not to result in attack from a dog,
Yeah.
or a bite from a dog.
It was told to me by Mr. Williams himself that he was just simply trying to get the dog out of the vehicle and bring it into the building. I don't think he was beating on the dog or anything like that. He was just trying to care for the dog.
But we don't know, none of us were there.
Yep, no, that's just what Cody told me.
Dave?
So I have a really odd position on this, mainly because I've met the dog multiple times. Mr. Norden does snow removal for a friend of mine near downtown, and I've met these dogs multiple times. I've never thought that the dog was dangerous. So I'm not disputing any of the things that are being said, but I've pet the dog multiple times, and I've never once thought that the dog was dangerous. So this really surprised me. And seeing this, I didn't even know that that's whose dog it was. And then I noticed that, oh, I actually know this person, and I know this dog. And again, I've seen this dog sitting in the boulevard in the grass, not attached to anything, just laying there, being very, very calm. And I've pet the dog on probably 4 to 5 occasions. So this is surprising to me. It doesn't mean that I necessarily disprove or disagree with what has happened here, but knowing that, I never once thought that the dog was dangerous. And that's all I can say about my own interaction with him. It doesn't mean that the dog is not potentially dangerous, but my own interaction with the dog, I did not feel that it was dangerous.
And you probably didn't provoke the dog.
And I'm not saying that the dog was or was not provoked. All I know is that in my interactions with him, very calm dogs. I mean, they're labs.
I'm familiar with the dogs also. I mean, I drive past that place with student drivers all the time, the dogs are out. I think part of the issue is, and I'm almost feeling like my hands are tied because of the statutory definitions of everything that comes in. And what I would say is, with, the personality of those dogs, unless you're concerned that Dixon's gonna bite somebody else, I would disagree with you in that this is a big thing. The dog, Dixon's not gonna go, oh my gosh, they've labeled me as potentially, he doesn't know, right? And I know it's concerning to you to have a label like that put on your dog, but it's not something that anybody's gonna know or see. So if you're fairly confident that Dixon's not gonna bite anything, this ends here. It's done. Whether if we say he's a potentially dangerous dog because of the definitions, he's good to go, unless he bites somebody else, and then it's an issue.
The issue then, to me,
Please
Approach
approach
the
the
mic,
mic. Yeah.
The issue to me comes from what Mr. O'Brien told me. The initial setting that you put me in, he changed the wording of how he did everything. He told me that I was going to have to pay $3,500 a year for fencing. Didn't you mention that?
No.
Yeah, well, it was mentioned to me. And insurance and all the, and, you know, because if he bites somebody once again, then I'm going to pay so much money. Well, I don't have that. So that's where,
bites
so that's
somebody
where
once
it
again,
potentially
he's-
comes into me as important.
He's done.
Okay, you are somewhat correct. I did say that. So the council labels this dog or agrees with me that this dog is a potentially dangerous dog. We go ahead and 2 months down the road, the dog bites somebody else. We're absolutely going to come in and, especially if this dog puts somebody in a hospital, we're going to say, now this dog is a dangerous dog.
Add another category, which is important to
Yep,
me.
can I explain it though? And yes, it does incur some substantial costs. He would need $300,000 insurance or bond covering anybody bit by the dog. When we've gone through this before, it's about $4,000 a year for the insurance. A pretty serious fencing situation. Dog can never be outside off on a longer than 6 foot leash. It's got to be muzzled at all times, but that's only if it's a dangerous dog. And then at that point, if it bit somebody else again, would you agree it's probably a dangerous dog?
I'm here because I think you're wrong on the way you handled yourself. That's why I'm here.
I'm kind of curious to hear what you mean by that.
I don't think you act very professionally.
Okay.
Hold up, hold up,
I don't want to go back and forth.
hold up, please. Yeah, let's see what Joe has to say here.
Call an objection. We're getting beyond the scope here. The only factual issue, as you indicated, Mr. President, is one of provocation. There's no question the gentleman was bit. So what I would like to have done at this point is to have Mr. Williams come to the podium here and just walk through his involvement with this dog, why he was asked to be handling the dog, and how and what happened that resulted in the bite.
I think that'd be relevant testimony.
If I may say one more thing, I'll be done. I won't say anything.
Okay, I'll give you 1 minute.
Mr. Williams told me when I got out of jail, which I rushed to get back home to my animals, he told me that he tried to drag Dixon out of the car. That's provocation. You touch a dog, you don't do that. You don't grab an animal, you don't grab a person, you don't grab any, you don't physically try to pull a dog out of the car.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
fine.
We'll hear from Mr. Williams now.
Can I just respond to Mr. Badeau's comment about the friendly dog? I see the dogs, everything. Very briefly. Every single dog bite I've attended, they've all said that exact same thing. It was a really awesome dog. We didn't think would ever bite somebody. And there's 72 puncture wounds in this 7-year-old girl's leg. I mean, it's always the same thing. Almost all dog bites are family dogs that bit somebody in the family.
All right, Mr. Williams, name and address, please.
Cody Williams, 5075 Brainerd Way, Brainerd, Minnesota. So, I have known Dixon and Simon, his two dogs, for I don't even know how long, a while, probably like 2 years. Never had a single problem. They're wonderful dogs, yeah, they're pretty laid back dogs. But, so, I was staying on, where his shop is. I was staying there, and I get woken up to police asking me to come outside and secure the shop, and so they had me come out front to the garage, and Steve asked me to close up the shop, close the big door, lock up, take care of his dogs. I was like, sure, I can do that. Figuring he was just going to sit overnight. So he went to jail or whatever. Everything was all good. I let him out to go potty, throughout the day. Everything was fine. I got him come back in. So then I left a few hours later, came back, let him go outside again. I repeated the process probably 3-4 times throughout the day. I let him out, say, later that night, let them out to go potty, and they were just acting super weird, like depressed almost. And I was like, come on, let's go inside. They wouldn't go inside. Like, they would not go inside. So now I can't have two dogs walking around the street, like out front of the building, you see, excuse me, possibly getting hit by cars. So the only other thing I could think of to do, being they would not come inside, I tricked them into a car ride. So I opened the door, they hopped in the car, I closed the door, figured they're better in the car than out potentially on the street. So I went out probably about 4 times throughout that night because it was really cold. Opened the door, they wouldn't get out. They were just sitting there. I was like, okay. Closed the door, came back 2 hours later, same thing. Approximately 6 a.m., I was like starting to feel bad for him. I was like, dude, they gotta be freezing in this car. And so I grabbed a couple cookies and, you know, trying to get them. I had the heater going in the shop, so it was all warm and whatnot. Grabbed some cookies, try and lure them out. They weren't moving. They were eating the cookies. Everything was good. And so I gave Dixon his cookie because they were both in the back seat, side by side. I gave him one, and then I went to give the other one, Simon, one who was on the other side, the far side. And I think I don't know, as I went to give him the cookie, Dixon turned around and bit me in the hand. Yeah. And then so I closed the car door and yeah.
Kelly?
Mr. Williams,
Yep.
do you know what the word provokes means?
Mm-hmm.
Did you provoke these dogs into biting you?
No.
No. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do have a question, and it's regarding, not a question. You know, here it says he gave a dog treat to Simon and Dixon attacked him. I guess giving it, and I own dogs, but even my dogs, when I give a treat to one, the other one's just waiting there. And a lot of times, you know, they want to be the first. Is that a possibility? Was Dixon did he take the cookie and had it all done when you gave the cookie to Simon?
Yeah, Dixon got his first, and then he was already basically done eating it, and I went to give Simon one. And then Dixon turned around and bit me in the hand.
Oh, I think giving a good boy a treat isn't provocation, though.
No. Well, no, I mean, that's just, the animals, they want to be the one to get the treats, you know?
Any other questions of Mr. Williams? Thank you for your testimony.
And Mr. President, that's the extent of the testimony before the council tonight. Again, it comes down to provocation, and then really the testimony of Mr. Williams of whether his act of providing treats to dog constitutes a provocation, as that term is defined by state law.
All right, thank you, Joe. So we conducted the hearing, and now it's time to make a determination of the facts and issue an order as to whether or not said animal is properly characterized as potentially dangerous.
Mr. Chair,
Kelly?
I'm ready for a motion when you are,
I am.
so we can discuss it properly. I move that Dixon is a potentially dangerous dog.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Tad seconds it. So we have a motion and a second on Dixon being a potentially dangerous dog. Speak to the motion, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You heard from Mr. Williams that he did not provoke the dog. I realize he's a young man, and he maybe was put into a position that he wasn't prepared for under the circumstances that the dog owner said. I get that. Often, dog bites, having been a dog owner myself, are rarely planned. Circumstances are always unfortunate. But if a dog bites somebody unprovoked, that's the definition. You heard Mr. Williams believes he didn't provoke the dog. I understand there's a lot of stuff about owning dogs, but this is a situation of dogs in public. Now, it actually wasn't, but they are. And if a dog bites somebody unprovoked, it's a potentially dangerous dog. So sticking to the letter of what I heard and from our attorney and from the victim, I have no choice but to vote in favor of it. I may not want to, but I have no choice.
And I support the motion for that reason exactly. I mean, it's written in statute. The dog, everybody agrees the dog did bite somebody on public or private land. And then we had the testimony from Mr. Williams that it did not provoke the dog. It's just, that's the state statute. Is there any other discussion? Dave?
You know, again, I feel my hands are tied when we look at the definition. The definition doesn't take into account whether the dog was stressed or not. It's whether a reasonable adult doing an action that doesn't believe that will provoke an aggressive result. I do believe, you know, Mr. Nordin said he wanted to kind of air some of his grievances about how it was handled. He was able to do that. Although I feel badly about this, I'm fairly confident, and I believe Mr. Nordin is also confident that Dixon is not going to bite somebody again. So I do support the motion.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Is this a forever? This designation of potentially dangerous is forever, okay?
For the life of the dog, I would.
Yeah, I
presume.
In
Thank you for
perpetuity.
perpetuity.
Mr. Chair, I do have to agree with everybody on that. I think the dog bit somebody, and that's what the dog bit somebody. And it's any dog that is purple. It is a potential dangerous dog. So I do unfortunately have to agree with the motion.
I'll just add to, I think it's a terribly unfortunate situation, obviously, for everybody involved, but at the end of the day, the dog bit somebody. And the designation of potentially dangerous dog, again, doesn't have the ramifications that perhaps Mr. Nardin thought it did. Again, that's why I seconded it.
Can I ask one more question of Joe?
Yeah, ask it through me, please.
Can I ask it through you? Could you ask Joe?
You just ask me.
Our city attorney.
I'll point to Joe.
What would happen if we did not designate it as a potentially dangerous dog and another bite occurs?
Joe?
Mr. President, Council, so basically it starts over. And it depends in part on the severity of the bite, too. So the bite can be severe enough that it actually becomes dangerous when one shot. But if it's another one like this, then you're starting over with a potentially dangerous dog designation and then moving forward from there.
Thank you, Joe. Dave?
So I'm not going to support the motion simply because, and I would have to, if I was a juror, I would definitely step up and say that I know the defendant. I've pet the dog. I don't think he's dangerous. So that's just off my own. That doesn't mean that I don't agree with everything that's been said. I've pet the dog. I like the dog.
It's a good boy.
It's a good boy. I feel bad for him that this is going to happen, but you know.
Okay.
He'll be okay.
He's going to be just fine. I understand
He
that.
doesn't bite anybody.
I understand that.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and spending your time with us on this issue tonight. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the final reading of proposed ordinance 1502, amending section 515-18, outdoor lighting of the Code of Ordinances. City Administrator Bergman recommends to dispense with the actual reading. David.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this is just the final hearing for proposed ordinance, or final reading, proposed ordinance number 1502. The first reading was held by the City Council on January 21st. So tonight, we're looking for two actions. First is a motion to hold or to dispense with the final reading of proposed ordinance number 1502, and then after that, consideration to adopt proposed ordinance number 1502.
Mr. Chairman, I ask Mr. Chansky a question while he's still at the microphone.
Yeah, you may.
Mr. Chansky, and I'm sure we all did, received a letter from our Chamber of Commerce Chair, Matt Killian. My understanding is it would be legal propose an amendment making this ordinance that we're in the process of adopting less restrictive.
And I'm gonna run that back past this, where'd he go? The city attorney. To my understanding, if the ordinance before you is amended, the process restarts.
Restarts all the way back to the
All the way
planning
back,
and
because you
zoning?
are changing what is being proposed here this evening. I
Okay,
will confirm
I'd
that
like
with
a
the city
clarification.
attorney, but that is my
So
understanding.
the restart is back to planning and zoning.
Back to planning and zoning.
Joe,
To rehold.
we have a question here.
So if they amend the ordinance that is being considered tonight, does it completely restart back to planning and zoning?
My
Can
question,
they amend it and adopt it?
Mr. Attorney, was if I propose an amendment making the proposed ordinance less restrictive, it's my understanding that we can proceed without restarting the entire process.
You're making it less restrictive than what the planning commission recommended?
Correct.
I would agree with you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment to see if there's a second.
I'll hear it.
Thank you. Based on my agreeing with Mr. Killian's letter, I would like to propose that that in the B1 and B2 zones, we adopt a 15-foot maximum height instead of the 13-foot, and in B3, B4, B5, and B6, adopt a 20-foot maximum height instead of the 13-foot. And I propose that, I motion that amendment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I think that this is my understanding of the intent of planning and zoning, is to prevent light pollution in residential zones. I get that. I'm in favor of that. I think what we went through with the school district exemplifies that. But we also learned that there are different things in the Harrison district than there is in the high school district. I kept trying to think of Cub Foods with 13-foot lights, and it just didn't work in my brain. And by the way, that's where the zoning would be for that. So I thought, if there is a possibility, and possibly I'm more sympathetic to this being a business owner in a B6 district, that we could make it slightly more palatable to those of us that have to light up commercial properties. I think Mr. Killian's recommendations were easier for me to swallow. So I trying to think of putting a 13-foot light on the property that I actually still own, and it doesn't work. It wouldn't work, and it would I suspect we would, at the very least, create a whole bunch of requests for variances. So it just seemed like if we could go a little bit more compromising in the commercial zones only, in the business zones only, I thought that was a good idea. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm going to vote no on the amendment.
Yeah.
I would totally support the B3, B4, B5, B6 districts, which are commercial districts. B1 and B2 are neighborhood business districts. That's Kingwood Street, that's Oak Street, that's businesses in the middle of neighborhoods.
Okay.
So I think that should remain 13 feet, but I could see the 20 feet in B3, 4, 5, and 6, absolutely.
My recommendation is we have a second. Let's vote on this and see what happens.
Yep, any other discussion?
Well, yes, I'd like to, as a planning and zoning liaison, we looked at this. We did take a lot of the restrictions out. And they can't, any business, if they want to make it 15, they can. They don't have to go through anything. It's administrative decision. So if you want to go 15 feet, then talk to Dave, and then he can make that decision. It doesn't have to come back to us. It's not a CUP or anything. So 13 feet is just what we put out there, and that's what the planning and zoning. We did a lot of time with that. We spent a lot of time with that, and Mike did a very good presentation last meeting. So I would not support this. I would support it as how it's written. So I cannot, because we did do a lot of serious thinking, and we did hold the public hearing. So, and we did too also listen to Mr. Killian's. He was at the public hearing, so the same thing that the letter said, he brought it forward, so.
I agree with Councilman Johnson about the B1 and B2. I would support a motion in that instance. As currently stated in this motion, I would vote against it. I really appreciate what we've done here in this process. The whole idea behind this is to make it so that we're streamlining it a little bit and that people aren't coming back and forth and we're having these arguments about lights all the time. It seems like we've talked a lot about lights recently. And so I like that we've gotten to a point where we're at least extremely close. But I would agree to that as well, that the B1 and B2, I would like to see kept on a smaller side. But I completely agree with you as well, Kelly, that it would be odd at least to have Cub Foods with 13-foot lights.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I have absolutely no problem withdrawing, because I agree with everything that you and Alderman Bedeau have said. I'd like to withdraw my motion if the seconder agrees.
Okay.
And then, and make the motion in the B3 through 6 at 20 feet.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second that would increase the B3 through 6 to 20 feet, but leaving 1 and 2 at 13 feet. And I absolutely support that motion.
That's a good idea.
Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries. So now the ordinance is amended. Now we still need to dispense with the final reading.
Mr. Chair, I move that we hold the final reading of the amended ordinance and dispense with the actual reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the amended ordinance by roll call.
If I may, Mr. President, because you were voting, and I think the city attorney can confirm this, voting to dispense with the reading, it had to be unanimous, correct?
Oh, correct. That was to dispense with the reading. So now
if it
we
is
have
not
to literally
unanimous,
read the
we can read it. If you
ordinance.
would like me to, I can read it with the corrections if you would like.
Let's follow the law and
This is
read
longer
the
than what
ordinance.
I had to read. This is great.
It's the entire ordinance.
Can you do it in a British accent?
Okay, ordinance number 1502, an ordinance amending Brainerd zoning ordinance, section 51518, outdoor lighting. The City Council of the City of Brainerd does ordain, Section 1, the Section 51518-2 exemption shall be amended by adding the following. E, outdoor lighting athletic facilities, except the lighting of such facilities shall be shut off within 90 minutes of final activity. Section 2, that Section 515-18-5 performance standards shall be amended by adding the following. A, residential standards. The maximum height of the fixture, pole, and base above the ground, grade permitted for the light sources is 13 feet. A light ordinance mounted on a structure shall not exceed the height of the structure. A, if a bulb light source is fully recessed and/or shielded from view by an observer at 5 feet above grade at the nearest property line, an increase in light source height to a maximum of 20 feet may be allowed. 3, the luminaire shall contain a full cutoff fixture which directs and cuts off light at an angle of 90 degrees or less. B, business industrial standards. Current number 4 is omitted. I should say it is removed. New, proposed point 4. In B1 and B2 districts, the maximum height of the fixture, pole, and base above ground permitted for light sources is 13 feet. A light source mounted on a structure shall not exceed the height of the structure. If the bulb light source is fully recessed and/or shielded from view, an observer at 5 feet above grade at the nearest property line, an increase in light source height to a maximum of 20 feet may be allowed. 5, in B3, B4, B5, and B6 districts, I'll say as amended by the City Council, the maximum height of the fixture, pole, and base above ground is permitted light sources is 20 feet. A light source mounted on a structure shall not exceed the height of the structure. A, if the bulb light source is fully recessed and/or shielded from view, an observer at 5 feet above grade at the nearest property line, an increase in light source height to a maximum of 25 feet may be allowed. 6, in I-1 and I-2 districts, the maximum height of the fixture, pole, and base above the ground grade permitted for light sources is 25 feet. The light source mounted on a structure shall not exceed the height of that structure. A, if the bulb light source is fully recessed and/or shielded from view by an observer at 5 feet above grade at the nearest property line, an increase in light source height to a maximum of 30 feet may be allowed. Section 3, all provisions in Section 515-18 shall remain in full force and effect. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect and be in full force 1 week after its publication.
Thank you for reading the ordinance for us. Now I am ready to,
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the amended ordinance by roll call.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance 1502 as amended tonight. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
Bedeau.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
No.
Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which I believe,
City.
Public forum.
Staff report. Public forum, sorry.
public forum.
4 different times.
Is there anybody here to speak on matters that are not listed on tonight's agenda? Is there anybody here to speak on matters that are not listed on tonight's agenda? Anybody here to speak on matters not listed on tonight's agenda? Seeing nobody rise, we will close the public forum and move on to staff reports. And 11A is the city administrator report.
Mr. President, members of the council, I did give you a written report. I just want to draw one to your attention, and that's the YMCA strategic planning. The YMCA is doing some strategic planning, and they're looking for they're talking with a short list of partners. And one of the things that they're asking for is that the city would meet with them to talk about our thoughts on the YMCA. I thought it would be really beneficial to have at least one city council member attend along with me. So, Mr. President, I would just ask for a volunteer or two.
I would do that. I love the YMCA. They want to hear what I have to say. Maybe somebody who doesn't love the YMCA would like to be on the committee. But I will. Does anybody other member of the council want to help? No? No.
I don't know when the meetings are.
All right, Mr. President, I will schedule something with the YMCA. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are you interested if we find meeting dates?
I think if you want to take it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Can't go in the middle of the day.
I know. There won't be. And they'll probably be in the pool, so, you know.
Yeah.
Ooh, so stuffy.
No, in the pool.
In the pool.
Oh, that's it. Okay, staff reports. Any updates since, come on up, David. Any other staff reports that need to update us? Make a line, yeah.
Just shortly, just a reminder that the Planning Commission does have a workshop scheduled for this Wednesday, February 5th, starting at 6 p.m. in the Fire Department Training Room.
Thank you.
2 things, Mr. President. We have a public open house tomorrow night for our state aid reconstruction projects on 5th Avenue Northeast and B Street. It'll be at the Fire Hall from 6 to 7:30. And we have one next week on Tuesday, the 11th, for our local reconstruction projects in Northeast Brainerd from 6 to 7:30 at the same spot. That's it.
Thank you.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Which fire hall?
The Fire Department Training Room at 23 Laurel Street.
Okay, Mayor Mank.
Okay. I got a letter today. It was kind of an interesting letter. It's from the Government Finance Officers Association, basically stating that we are pleased to notify you that your comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending 2018 qualifies for GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financing Reporting. This is reflective on our finance director. I sincerely thank her very much for her hard work and ability to put together the report so that we get an award.
It wouldn't happen without staff and the help of all department heads. to put it together. So thank you for them as well.
No, good job, Connie and department heads.
I think you should make that speech while holding the award like they do in the
We don't have it framed yet.
Right now, we can't find it. It's put away for construction, so
in
we'll
one of the
put it out
files.
there.
I was traveling this last week, and I happened to see a couple of things. One, by the way, our downtown streets have been really well maintained by the snow removal. And in fact, this morning, they were trying to get some of the hard crusted ice off of some of the alleyways. So I do thank the city for that. When I was down in Winona, which is down in the southeastern corner of the state, they had quite a controversy going on because their downtown businessmen push the snow off the sidewalk and the city pushes it back on the sidewalk. It's kind of a fight. We took care of that about 20 years ago, going to a special assessment district. It does work wonders for our downtown. The other thing is, we sometimes have budget issues here. There's a small town in Wisconsin near between Winona, La Crosse area, Arcadia. They have several rivers coming into that area, and it's habitually flooding and getting worse. The state and the government have said they'll put up dikes for $30-some million. The city's budget of it is a little over $13 million. This is a city with a $3 million total budget a year. They don't know where they're going to get the funds, so I think we're doing okay here.
It sounds like they need a
Take
national
the
campaign.
$30 million, let everybody move uphill a couple meters.
So, that's it.
Thank you, Mayor. That'll bring us to council member reports. We'll start with Alderman Bedeau.
Nothing to report.
Nothing here.
Nothing here.
I'll report on the HRA. Our executive director position is closing in about 3 hours, the application period. We have, as of Friday, I believe, 13 applicants over there, and we're going to be moving forward and hopefully having somebody in a couple months. I see Tyler's in the back room. I'd like to congratulate Bladek and Tyler Glenn on the new position as president, executive director of Brainerd Lakes Area Economic Development Company. I look forward to continuing to work with you on the City of Brainerd projects. And also, I would just ask everybody to keep Kevin Stunek and his family in your prayers, that he's missed the last couple meetings where he has some family stuff going on, and it's prayers help.
The only thing I have to report, we're going to be having a speech tournament at Forest View on the 15th, so if any of you would like to come in and judge, we would be more than happy to have you come in.
Nothing to report except for, Sean, my laptop just locked up. As soon as Tyler's name was mentioned. I'm going to give it to you, don't leave.
Okay, so now that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to the council workshop next Monday in the police training room.
Or a second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Did we get a hard close down on these things?
Better put pen